Tonight we'll be taking a deeper look at what's taken place in Poland today as multiple Russian drones were shot down over Polish airspace. It was the first time one NATO country has called on another to assist in airspace engagement, as the Netherlands sent assistance to the Polish in the form of several fighter jets helping to intercept those drones. That prompted Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk to trigger Article 4 of NATO's treaty, one which enables members to demand consultations with their allies.
The material damage after some 19 drones entered Polish airspace is minimal. Some debris left by the downed UAVs and a damaged rooftop. But the apparent Russian incursion has left a deeper mark on people's minds.
I'm terrified, like most citizens in Poland, because we're so close, and Putin is unpredictable. You never know what might happen.
It's a fear that paralyzes me and makes me want to cut myself off from it. But when I get up in the morning and read an alert like this, I imagine that everything is okay right now, but tomorrow it might not be.
NATO met to discuss the incident, which came 3 days after Russia's largest aerial attack on Ukraine since the war began. For Prime Minister Donald Tusk, this is the closest Poland has been to an open conflict since the Second World War.
This is the first time that Russian drones have been shot down over the territory of a NATO member country, which is why all our allies are taking the situation very seriously.
Several European leaders said they believe that the incursion amounted to an intentional escalation by Russia. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen pledged that Europe would defend every inch of its territory, as she called for more sanctions on Moscow. While the British Defence Minister said Russia's aggression strengthened European unity with Ukraine, after a meeting with representatives from France, Italy, Germany and Poland.
Russia's actions are reckless, they're dangerous, they're unprecedented. We see what Putin is doing. Yet again, he is testing us. Yet again, we will stand firm.
For its part, the Russian Defence Ministry said it did not target Poland and accused Warsaw of spreading myths. Faced with a dangerous precedent for Europe, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged a common air defence system with Kyiv's European allies. Russian missiles have previously entered the airspace of countries bordering Ukraine, but this is the first time they've been shot down, and the first known instance of a NATO country firing during the war.
To unpack the latest developments, let's get the expertise of Dafydd Townley, teaching fellow in US politics and international security at the University of Portsmouth. Thank you so much for joining us, Dafydd. So we know that Article 4 of NATO has been invoked by Poland, but what exactly does this mean for alliance members, and how far could consultations, if what I understand to be correct of Article 4, how far could they realistically go in preventing any kind of escalation in the future?
Well, this is obviously a significant turning point in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Certainly, this is only the 7th time in NATO's history that Article 4 has been invoked. So it's it's a major point in terms of how NATO deals with the conflict. Whether this leads to any sort of future escalation in relationship between NATO and Russia is unclear, but it's likely to be how does NATO build up resilience and ensure the territorial integrity of its member states is protected by adequate air defences. And I think that's one of the things that was quite evident today, is that although fortunately nobody was injured during this incursion into Polish airspace, the success rate of the air defences in dealing with the Russian drones is probably not as good as NATO would want. So there'll be a lot of discussions here about how to improve the success rate in dealing with these drones, but also what paths can the organisation will take next.
Well, it's one thing to actually deal with it in real time, but it's another thing to talk about Europe's capacity to deal with it, and NATO in general. Where do you put it? How capable is NATO at this point?
Well, I think NATO at the moment is unsure of its certainly it's unsure of its position in terms of its unity. I think the European members are entirely behind each other. We've certainly seen E5 member states, as the video showed, discuss what they think of the situation. The United States has been very quiet, and any action that comes as a result of this will be reliant on the US's support. So if the US decides that it doesn't want to get involved in this, then Europe is first of all going to have to certainly significantly increase its capabilities in terms of its manufacturing and defense production, and also potentially put more assets around the borders that it shares now with Russia. Of course, with the admittance of Finland to NATO, the direct border that NATO shares with Russia now has increased significantly compared to what it was just 2 years ago.
You've mentioned the United States being quiet. Donald Trump still called it a violation of Poland's airspace on social media. Prime Minister Donald Tusk warned that the situation is inching towards open conflict. And I think it's a question a lot of people will be asking themselves is, after this, how close are we going from Article 4 to Article 5?
Well, Article 5, of course, has only been invoked once. I think there's a major step between Article 4 and Article 5. I think that Article 5, of course, doesn't mean that every member state has to provide military support, but certainly support to a member state that has been attacked in that way. This is, of course, not the first time that Poland's airspace or NATO's airspace has been invaded by Russian assets over the last, 3 years now, or 3.5 years since the conflict has begun. But this is the first time that NATO members have fired shots in anger. And so whether we see the next step is NATO get involved in a conflict beyond its borders, of course, that is something that will be discussed at length by its members over the next weeks, one would suggest. I know that Trump is certainly going to be talking with Tusk over the next, I think, 24 hours about what sort of actions he's going to recommend. So it'd be interesting to see where the organisation moves from there. It's very much reliant on American support at the moment. I think NATO ideally would like there to be a diplomatic solution to this. We've seen in the clip Ursula von der Leyen call for increased sanctions, but sanctions only have a limited impact on Russia, and it's something that is quite clear that Russia is not seeking peace at this moment, and doesn't appear to have any intention.
Sorry, Dafydd, that brings me to my next question. Because Russia has, as you say, violated that airspace on several occasions over the past 3 years, is this being done deliberately? I know it's quite difficult to go into the mind of the Kremlin as things stand, but was this a deliberate act?
Well, I think so. I mean, Russia has obviously claimed it wasn't, or certainly it claimed it wasn't targeting Poland. And certainly some of the Russian-produced drones that have been were shot down or ended up in Poland are usually used in a swarm. They don't tend to contain explosives. It's usually the Iranian-produced Shahed drones that do that. But certainly I think that this is Russia, or Putin at least, pushing his testing his boundaries as it were. He's certainly testing to resolve NATO, and I think he's certainly indicating to NATO member states and to the United States that essentially he has no intention of sitting down with Zelensky and Ukraine at the moment. He's quite happy to see out the conflict over the winter and into next year. He's certainly in a better position, I think, than Ukraine to deal with a long, extended conflict. And that's something I think that has to be taken into consideration should any diplomatic solution be sought.
And I guess that's exactly why it has elicited such a stern response from Volodymyr Zelensky. It was to be expected, but he's called on Western allies to do more. And he's also called for a joint European defence shield. How feasible is an idea like that, especially at this juncture?
Well, of course, the idea is praiseworthy, but at the same time, it comes with a lot of complications in terms of who would lead it. It would also inevitably be nations committing troops or assets to some sort of conflict if Ukraine is part of that coalition, if you want to call it that. I think that there is room for a European military coalition as well as NATO. And I think that to a certain extent offers European states greater assurance of the reliability of their partners. I think that if nations are willing to put those assets on the front line, then we might well see a change in attitudes within NATO itself. Of course, the admittance of Ukraine into NATO is exactly what Zelensky wants, what Putin doesn't want, but that's unlikely to be at any point any sort of discussion amongst NATO member states at the moment. So I think a European coalition of certainly of a protection force of some sort sounds more likely, but where do they, most nations at the moment are struggling in terms of producing enough armaments, ordnance, assets, etc., for its own needs to replenish the stocks it's already given to Ukraine.
And that is an ongoing issue for the rest of Europe. The coalition of the willing, though, very much in action, at least in terms of talks, but not in terms of any kind of physical movement. Thank you so much, Dafydd Townley, joining us there from the University of Portsmouth, where he is a teaching fellow in politics of the United States and international security.